heard my mother laugh. Not the normal kind. A tight one. Quick. Controlled. Then I heard paper slide across the dining table. A pen clicked. Someone said, "She won't remember signing it." Then silence. The kind that makes your skin go cold. I stayed in the hallway. Barefoot. Holding my car keys. I don't know how long I stood there. Long enough to hear my sister ask, "And the rest of the money?" Long enough for my father to answer, "We move it in smaller amounts. That way it won't trigger anything." I didn't walk in. I didn't make a sound. I just stared at the wall while my own heartbeat started sounding too loud. Because a week earlier, my grandmother had asked me why her bank felt smaller. She'd said it like she was embarrassed. Like maybe she'd forgotten something. And I told her she was probably just confused. I told her not to worry. I told her I'd check on it. Standing in that hallway, hearing my parents discuss her money like they were planning a grocery list, one thought hit me so hard I almost dropped my keys. That's when I realized something was very wrong. I'm 32, and until that month, I thought I understood my family. Not perfectly. Just enough. My father handled important things. My mother handled appearances. My younger sister, Lena, had always been the one everyone rescued. If she wanted something, there was always a reason she needed it more than anyone else. I was the useful one. The reliable one. The one people called when paperwork needed sorting, when grandma needed groceries, when someone had to drive across town and sit through a doctor's appointment. I didn't mind most of the time. Grandma practically raised me. Helping her never felt like a burden. What started bothering me was how often my parents suddenly wanted to help her too. They'd ignored her for years unless it was a holiday or there were photos involved. But once Lena announced she was finally ready to launch her wellness business, my parents started orbiting Grandma like she was a bank branch with a pulse. At first, it looked harmless. My mother offering to organize Grandma's mail. My father insisting he'd take care of her finances because online scams are everywhere now. Lena showing up with fake concern and smoothies she never stayed long enough to finish. Grandma noticed it too, but she kept defending them. "Your mother means well," she'd say. "Your father is just trying to help." That was Grandma. She could turn a knife into a misunderstanding. Then the small things started. A missing checkbook. A utility bill she swore she'd already paid. A pharmacy charge she didn't recognize. A new envelope from her bank that had already been opened before she saw it. Nothing huge. Nothing clean enough to accuse anyone over. Just enough to make me uncomfortable. So I started doing what I always do when something feels wrong. I got practical. I offered to set up her medications in a labeled tray. I photographed every document on her kitchen counter for organization. I made a simple spreadsheet of her monthly expenses and account balances based on the statements she still had. The numbers didn't scream. They whispered. A few thousand here. A transfer there. One home support reimbursement. Another family emergency assistance. Every transaction had a harmless name. But together, they made a pattern. And patterns don't lie. When I mentioned it to my mother, she smiled too quickly and told me I was making Grandma anxious for no reason. When I brought up a transfer to my father, he gave me that tired, disappointed look he used to use when I was a teenager and asked too many questions. "You always assume the worst," he said. That money went to her care. Her care. That phrase kept coming up. Funny thing was, Grandma's actual care was still mostly me. I was the one buying her groceries. I was the one refilling her prescriptions. I was the one taking her to appointments and paying out of pocket when her insurance delayed something. But every time I got close to asking something direct, someone would step in and smooth it over. Lena cried once and said I was trying to ruin the family because she was finally doing something with her life. My mother accused me of jealousy. My father told me not to disrespect him in his own house. So I stopped asking. And then Grandma said something that changed the temperature in the room. I was helping her fold laundry when she held up a cardigan and asked, "Did I give your sister $200,000? She said it gently. Like maybe it was possible. Like maybe she was asking me to save her from the answer. I asked her why she thought that. She looked down and said, "Your father told the banker I approved a family investment." Then she added, very quietly, "I don't remember doing that." I didn't say anything for a few seconds. I just kept folding the same towel in my hands. Because that's the moment the discomfort turned into something else. Not suspicion. Not yet. Something colder. I started noticing how often my father answered questions for her. How my mother hovered whenever mail arrived. How Lena suddenly talked about branding, launch costs, supplier deposits, and temporary family support like she was rehearsing lines someone had fed her. And after what I heard in that hallway, I understood something important. If I pushed too soon, they would close ranks. If I got emotional, they'd call me unstable. If I accused them without proof, they'd bury it. So I stopped reacting. And I started watching. For the next 11 days, I acted normal. That was the hardest part. I still came by on Sundays. Still brought Grandma her low-sodium soup from the deli she liked. Still listened to my mother complain about inflation and my father complain about how hard it is to help people who don't appreciate it. I nodded. I smiled when I had to. And I listened. The first solid piece of evidence came from a place none of them thought to check. Grandma's voicemail. She had one of those old habits where she never deleted anything. If someone called, she saved it. If the pharmacy called, she saved it. If a robocle slipped through, she probably saved that too. I was helping her clear space on her phone when I found a message from the bank's senior advisor. It was polite, professional, and devastating. Mrs. H, just confirming tomorrow's 11:30 appointment regarding the transfer authorization and account restructuring documents discussed with your son. Please bring photo ID if possible. If someone will be assisting you, we can have the forms prepared in advance. The message was dated 3 weeks earlier. The day Grandma had supposedly been too tired to leave the house. I remember staring at the screen and feeling my chest go cold. Because I had been there that day. I had dropped off groceries around noon. She was home. In slippers. Watching a cooking show. She hadn't gone anywhere. So either the bank had made a major mistake, or someone had taken her there at a different time and hidden it, or the assistants had gone far beyond helping her sign a form. I asked Grandma if she remembered visiting the bank. She frowned, thought for a while, then said, "Your father drove me somewhere. He said we were updating paperwork because of taxes." That was all she had. No details. No certainty. Just fragments. I didn't push her further. Memory gets slippery when someone keeps telling you what happened instead of letting you remember it yourself. The second piece came 2 days later. A receipt. Folded inside an old recipe book in her kitchen drawer. It was from a notary office. 2 signatures witnessed. One of them was hers. The other was my father's. I took a photo and put the receipt back exactly where I found it. That same evening, I called the notary office from my car and asked a simple question. "Do you keep appointment logs?" The woman on the phone said yes. I told her I was trying to confirm whether my grandmother had attended an appointment because there was concern about elder financial coercion. There was a pause. Then her tone changed. Careful. Formal. She said she couldn't release anything directly, but if law enforcement or an attorney requested records, they would cooperate. That told me enough. Then came the thing that made it impossible to pretend this was just family confusion. The recording. And no, I didn't plant some dramatic hidden microphone in a lamp like a movie. It was much dumber than that. My grandmother had one of those smart speakers in the dining room that she only used to ask for weather updates and old songs from the 60s. A few months earlier, I'd linked the household app to help her with setup. I'd forgotten about it until I realized the device sometimes logged accidental voice activations. Not always. But sometimes. I checked. And there it was. Short audio clips. Fragmented. Time-stamped. Most were useless. Plates clinking. A television in the background. My mother asking for a grocery list. But one clip, from the night I stood in the hallway, had captured almost 3 full minutes. I sat in my parked car outside my apartment and listened to it 3 times. My father's voice, we already moved 190. My sister, that's not enough to cover the launch and the apartment. My mother, she's declining. If we don't secure it now, it'll get tied up later. Then my father again. Calm. Matter of fact. She signed the authorization. If anyone asks, it was for family care and estate simplification. And then the line I couldn't stop hearing. She won't remember the difference. No yelling. No threats. That's what made it worse. It sounded routine. Administrative. Like they had converted theft into paperwork and convinced themselves that made it clean. I didn't cry. I didn't break anything. I didn't call anyone. I just exported the clip, emailed it to a new encrypted address, uploaded it to a private cloud folder, and then sat there in silence until my phone battery dropped to 12%. That was the emotional center of it for me. Not anger. Recognition. Because once you hear your own family calmly discussing how to take money from the woman who raised you, something ends. Not loudly. Just permanently. The next morning, Lena posted a photo of herself at a rooftop brunch with the caption, "Building something big. Grateful for support." I looked at that picture for maybe 5 seconds. Then I closed the app and opened a new folder on my laptop. I named it everything. By the end of the week, it held bank screenshots, photograph statements, the notary receipt, call logs, a written timeline, and the audio file in 3 different formats. I didn't confront them. Not because I was scared. Because I finally understood the only thing that mattered. Confronting them would have ruined everything. Once I had proof, the whole thing became less emotional and more procedural. That helped. Feelings make people sloppy. Systems don't. I spent the next 4 days building distance between the evidence and myself. 1 copy stayed on an encrypted drive in my apartment. 1 went into a cloud folder under a neutral name. 1 went onto a cheap USB I taped inside the lining of an old winter coat in my closet. And 1, the most important one, I physically handed to someone who had no reason to protect my family. An attorney. Her name was Denise Calder, and she specialized in elder financial abuse and estate fraud. I found her through a local legal aid referral, then paid for a private consult because I didn't want anything informal or vague. I brought a binder. Not because I was trying to be dramatic. Because I knew if I spoke too emotionally, I'd lose the shape of it. So I let the paper speak first. She read in silence for almost 20 minutes. The voicemail. The transaction pattern. The notary receipt. The timeline. Then she listened to the recording once, paused it, and looked at me over her glasses. "Do they know you have this?" I said no. "Good," she said. "Keep it that way." That sentence changed everything. Because up until then, part of me still thought maybe I was overreacting. Maybe there was some technical explanation buried under all of it. Maybe there was still room for a misunderstanding. Denise removed that illusion in under an hour. She told me the pattern was classic. Incremental transfers. Family member access disguised as caregiving. Pressure on an older relative during paperwork appointments. Normalization through repetition. She said the reason cases like this go on for so long is simple. The people doing it rely on shame, confusion, and the victim's desire not to believe their own family would do it. Then she asked the question that mattered most. Does your grandmother still have legal capacity to understand what's happening? I told her yes. Mostly. But she was forgetful, easily pressured, and very trusting of my father. Denise nodded and said, "Then the window is still open." By the next afternoon, she had referred us to an adult protective services contact and quietly flagged the case for financial exploitation review. She also advised me to stop discussing money around my family, stop asking questions, and most importantly, stop giving them any sign I was preparing something. So I got quieter. And that, apparently, made them comfortable. My mother stopped doing her fake reassurance routine. She assumed I'd lost interest. My father returned to that relaxed, mildly superior tone he uses when he thinks he's won. Lena got bolder. She started talking openly about things she had no business paying for. A luxury lease. A designer branding package. A deposit on a high-rise apartment she called temporary until the business scales. She even showed Grandma fabric samples for the launch event and had the nerve to say, "You've helped make this possible." Grandma smiled weakly because she didn't understand what she was being thanked for. That part almost broke my self-control. But I stayed inside the plan. Denise told me to document every suspicious interaction going forward, so I did. Dates, times, statements, screenshots. I also did one more thing my family never would have expected. I spoke directly to the bank's fraud and vulnerable customer protection department. Not in person. Not dramatically. Through the proper reporting channel, with supporting files, on legal advice. That's when the machinery started moving behind the scenes. Quietly. Review holds. Internal flags. Request trails. Signature verification. Transaction origin mapping. I didn't know exactly what they were doing, and I didn't ask for updates I wasn't entitled to. Denise handled most of that. But I could feel the air changing. My father got 2 calls from the bank in 1 week and came home in a bad mood both times. My mother started asking weirdly casual questions. Did Grandma say anything strange to you lately? Has she seemed confused about paperwork? Do you think she remembers who paid for her medication last month? That last one told me they were already building a defense. Not innocence. A narrative. That's what manipulative people do when facts start moving toward them. They don't prepare the truth. They prepare a version. So I did the same thing responsible people do when liars start rehearsing. I got ahead of them. Denise arranged for Grandma to meet privately with an independent physician and later with a forensic interviewer who specialized in elder coercion cases. No family. No pressure. Just neutral documentation. That meant if my parents tried to say Grandma had gifted the money freely, there would now be a professionally documented record of her confusion, dependence, and the pressure environment around her. And still, somehow, they had no idea. 3 days later, my mother invited everyone to Sunday dinner. She sounded cheerful. Too cheerful. "Let's have one nice family evening," she said. When I arrived, the dining table was already set. Candles lit. My father carving roast chicken like he was hosting a holiday commercial. Lena smiling with that polished, over-rehearsed face she wears when she wants something. They thought the hard part was over. They thought whatever they'd signed, transferred, hidden, and justified had already become permanent. I remember looking around that table and thinking something very simple. None of you understand what's already in motion. At 7:14 p.m., my father lifted his glass and said, "To family." At 7:19, there was a knock at the front door. My mother stood up, still smiling, and said, "Who on earth is that?" My father looked at me. I looked back at him. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't look away. They thought it was just another day. It wasn't. My mother opened the door still holding a linen napkin. I heard her say, "Can I help you?" Then her voice changed. Not louder. Thinner. A man introduced himself first. Then a woman. Both calm. Both official. They asked to come inside. My father was already standing by then. Not panicked yet. Just irritated in that controlled way people get when they assume authority still belongs to them. "What is this about?" he asked. No one answered immediately. That was the first crack in his confidence. Because people like my father are used to controlling the rhythm of a room. Questions out. Answers back. Everyone else reacting around them. This time, the room didn't move for him. The 2 agents stepped in, followed by a local financial crimes investigator and, a minute later, Denise. She had warned me there was a chance federal involvement could happen if the account routing and fraud review connected to broader financial reporting issues. Apparently, it had. My mother looked at Denise like she was a stain that had appeared on the carpet. Lena just froze. The female agent asked everyone to remain seated. No shouting. No dramatic handcuffs. No one thrown against a wall. Just forms. Names. Instructions. That's what people never understand about consequences. Real ones are usually quiet. The first thing they did was separate Grandma from the room. Denise walked her gently into the den and closed the door. She'd arranged in advance for a medical advocate to stay with her, so she wouldn't have to hear any of what came next. That mattered to me more than anything. Grandma had spent enough of her life cleaning up other people's messes. She didn't need front row seats to this one. The investigator laid out exactly why they were there. Unauthorized transfers. Questionable authorizations. Potential coercion. Possible elder financial exploitation. My father tried to interrupt twice. The second time, the agent held up a hand and said, "Sir, you'll have the opportunity to respond. Right now, we're explaining the basis of the inquiry." He sat down after that. My mother did what I expected. She shifted instantly into performance. Confused wife. Overwhelmed daughter. Concerned caregiver. She kept saying phrases like "there must be some misunderstanding" and "we've only ever tried to help." Lena cried on cue. Not because she was devastated. Because she thought tears still worked in rooms like this. Then the investigator placed a small digital recorder on the table. Not mine. Theirs. But they had the transcript of mine. And when he read one sentence aloud, the room changed. "She won't remember the difference." No one spoke for several seconds. Lena looked at my father. My mother looked at me. And my father, for the first time in my entire life, looked like a man who had run out of versions of himself. He asked where the recording came from. No one answered him. Because it didn't matter. The truth had already entered the room. Source was irrelevant now. What followed took weeks, not minutes. That's the part people skip when they tell these stories. They want the single perfect moment. The collapse. The instant payoff. Real justice is slower than that. That night was only the beginning. Within 10 days, the bank accounts in question were restricted pending review. Multiple transfers were traced. Signature comparisons raised additional concerns. The notary appointment was formally requested. The bank advisor who had handled the restructuring was interviewed. And once professionals start asking careful questions, weak lies fall apart fast. My father had treated the whole thing like a private family arrangement. But financial exploitation stops being family business the moment it leaves a trail. By the second week, Denise had helped Grandma file for full financial protection measures and revoke every layer of access my father had inserted around her accounts. A neutral fiduciary was temporarily assigned while things were untangled. That part gave me more relief than I can explain. Because for the first time in months, no one in my family could reach her money by guilt, pressure, or proximity. Lena's business launch quietly disappeared. The apartment deposit didn't survive. The car lease ended almost as quickly as it had begun. My mother stopped calling me entirely after she left one voicemail saying, "I hope you're happy with what you've done." I deleted it without replying. My father tried once. He sent a single text. "You destroyed this family." I looked at it for a long time before putting the phone face down. Because that sentence had probably worked on me a year earlier. Maybe even 6 months earlier. But once you've watched someone steal from an elderly woman and call it care, the emotional vocabulary changes. I didn't destroy anything. I documented it. As for the FBI, their involvement stayed exactly where it belonged, formal, limited, and very real. I'm not going to pretend this turned into some dramatic national case. It didn't. But because some of the movement patterns and reporting issues crossed thresholds they care about, their presence changed the tone immediately. My parents had spent years relying on one assumption. That family pressure would always stay bigger than consequences. They were wrong. A little over a month later, I helped Grandma move her important documents into a locked fireproof box she kept in the hall closet. Then I sat with her on the back porch while she watered plants she'd nearly forgotten she still liked. She didn't ask me for every detail. Maybe she knew enough. Maybe she didn't want to know more. At one point, she looked at me and said, "Things feel lighter in the house now." I said, "Yeah, they do." And that was it. No speech. No victory lap. No dramatic ending. Just evening air. A hose running softly over soil. A woman who was finally safe. When I got home, I put the last binder on the top shelf of my closet and turned off my phone. No calls. No messages. No explanations left to give. That night, everything was quiet.